Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Scotland and we're going to have a look at a beer from another brewery that I've never tried anything from before. So these guys are another relatively new addition to the Scottish beer scene. I've heard good things about their beers and I always think it's nice to introduce the relatively new and very small and unheard of breweries here on the channel actually. So yeah, always cool to introduce them at a very early point in their history. Now, the beer that we're having a look at today is a style that I do quite enjoy, but not one that I get to review all that often. It is a little bit more of a kind of unusual choice, I guess we could say, for the first beer from a brewery, but why not? Let's just see how we go. So, quite curious to see how this one turns out. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and I hope that you guys enjoy my take on it as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head through to Glasgow once again. We're going to go to the south side, and we're going to have a look at my first beer from Dookit Brewing. So this particular beer is called Beelzebub. It comes in at 5.9% ABV, and this one is a porter. So yeah, I honestly couldn't tell you what the last porter I reviewed on the channel was, but yeah, I think it's been a bit overdue to do another porter, to be honest with you. So we'll just need to see how we get on with this one. But I actually discovered this brewery, I'm sure, by looking at the Wee Beer Shop's website, because you can always find some really interesting things on there actually. And I just noticed this one, and then when I was through in Edinburgh a couple of weeks ago, I came across this bottle at the Campervan Brewery tap room, so I bought one to take away so that I could review the brewery for you here on the channel. So yeah, finally getting around to sitting down and filming this one for you, because we had so many IPAs and light beers that we had to get through before I could go on to the darker stuff. So yeah, this one has been a long time coming, to be honest. But yeah, let's crack on then and see how we go. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Dookit Brewing. This is the very first time I'm trying one of their beers, as I mentioned, but there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Scottish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to very regular at the moment, because I am at home in the motherland of Scotland for a little while. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then, to tell you a little bit about Dookit Brewing Company. So Dookit Brewing, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in the south side of Glasgow, and the company was founded by Harry Weskin. So Harry has worked in pubs from quite an early age, and he got into craft beer through this, but later he started working in commercial breweries as a warehouse manager, and then later as a brewery assistant, and he just worked his way up from there, and along the way he got into home brewing and developing his own recipes as well. But Harry is helped with Dookit by his partner and also some friends, and he cites Hazel Dunn, the brand designer, as having been incredibly helpful in helping him get Dookit off the ground as well. But the brewery name Dookit is the Glaswegian West Coast Scottish way of spelling dovecote. So apparently keeping birds in Dookits was once a popular hobby in Glasgow, and you can still find several of these little bird house sort of things around the city, and apparently the word is now used to describe a kind of small space, usually without doors. I've never really heard that, to be honest with you. I'm from Stirling kind of area originally, but it's not something that you would hear used too commonly around here, to be honest with you. So it just goes to show you there is quite a big dialectal difference in different places across Scotland. So yeah, Dookit Brewing, basically like a birdhouse brewery, I guess you could say. But anyway, at present, the brewery is a one-man band, and the beers are brewed at Ride Brewing Company, who are also based through in Glasgow. But the first beers were released at the end of 2020, and the brew kit that they're using at Ride is a 5 BBL kit. But Harry does hope to purchase his own one soon, as soon as possible, and open up a small tap room as well. But as of November 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced 7 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and I'm sure they will continue to add a few more to that over the coming years. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about the brewery for the moment. If you would like to learn more, as I say, check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on. They do have a Twitter account as well, if I remember correctly. And yeah, you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. And you know, you'll probably find these beers in the good bottle shops through in Glasgow, the likes of Grunting Growler, the Wee Beer Shop, you know, the Good Beer Company, and also Valhalla's Goat in the Cave. You'll probably find them in all these kind of places. So yeah, that's it. And as I say, I got this one in Edinburgh, so they are starting to spread out across the country a little bit. But yeah, that's everything for your history section of the video, and a special thank you to Harry for giving me the information on this brewery, because there wasn't a lot about this brewery at all in blogs or anything like that. So yeah, big thank you to him for giving me all that information in the email that I sent him. So yeah, let's crack on and have a little look at the beer itself. So when I got this one, it was actually a little bit of a nostalgia hit for me, because this is the same kind of bottle that we used to get the Brewski beers from Helsingborg over in Sweden in. I loved these little bottles when Brewski were doing their beers in these. Now they're in the kind of the sort of Red Bull size can sort of things, but to see that Dookit Brewing were selling their beers in these things, I thought was very, very cool. So it's just a plain sort of slightly gold coloured bottle cap on this one. As you can see, quite a thin glass bottle, but these are pretty nice. But there you can see, it tells you a little bit about the beer on the side, but there you can see the Dookit Brewing Company symbol, which I think is pretty cool. But there you can see Beelzebub, the Black Sun, when the devil comes out and all of this. And it tells you a little bit on the side here. So it says, knocking within, enter a porter. Who's there in the name of Beelzebub? A devilishly rich but smooth porter, 13 malts mingle within to conjure flavours of roasted coffee and chocolate raisins. Knock, knock, knock. Who's there? A complex London porter made with slightly hardened Glasgow water. I pray you remember the porter. So yeah, pretty cool actually. But yeah, 330ml bottle. This one, I actually can't remember what I paid for it, to be honest with you, because it was bought when I filmed my out and about video at Campervan Brewery. That was where I got this one, so I'm pretty sure either that or it was Beer Hive, but I think this one was bought at Campervan Brewery, in fact. But yeah, anyway, 5.9% London style porter. This one at the Beelzebub from Dookit Brewing Company in the south side of Glasgow. Let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. It's exploding a little bit, but it should be okay. I was worrying about that, but yeah, we'll get the rest of it out. Anyway, there we are. You just have to be careful with that. That's one thing I'm always wary of with beers from the very small breweries. Sometimes because of the bottle fermentation, they can get a little bit excited. But this one wasn't too bad. This one wasn't too bad at all. But yeah, let's get the rest of that out and into the glass there. So yeah, it behaved itself quite well. I only lost a drop or two, which was quite nice. But yeah, there we are. So anyway, before the head disappears from this beer, as you can see, it's poured with about a 1/3 finger of a frothy, I would say a very light beige head there. You can see if I bring the glass in, the camera zoomed in on that quite nicely. Lovely kind of medium-sized bubbles there. That head is just fading away to be a really nice thin foamy layer, but with a thicker foamy ring around the edge of the glass. But yeah, 1 or 2 big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there, and overall it does look pretty nice actually. So yeah, very nice. So in terms of I don't think there's anything else we need to say about the head or the bubbles and things like that, but in terms of colour, this one is pretty much what you'd expect. It's got a lovely dark ebony kind of rosewood colour. If you shine the light through it, it does have a little bit of that kind of it does have a wee bit of that sort of Pepsi Max, Coca-Cola type coloured edge to it. But yeah, basically this beer is as black as night, dark ebony rosewood colour. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining the EBC rating. 2, the length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any adjuncts that you put in or any barrel aging that you do can also affect the colour of the beer, but quite often in porters it's not pronounced enough to notice that if you do age the porter. It's only really in these imperial sours and things like that you're going to notice that. And some of the more brown sugary type beers, the quadruples and the Scotch ales and sometimes the barley wines as well, you can notice these sort of things. But yeah, not often Well, you do get some adjunct porters, but not all that many these days in my experience. But yeah, lovely looking porter beer. This one at 5.9% as well. It is kind of, it's maybe a little bit stronger than some of the more traditional ones that you're going to find down in England. It's maybe more an American strength porter, so we should point that out as well. But yeah, it certainly looks the part. We'll take a closer look at the aroma now then and see how we get on. Don't think there's anything else we need to say about the appearance of this one. So yeah, aroma time. Ooh, I'm going to say straight away, you know, sometimes you can smell a beer and you just know that it's going to be good quality, and I've got a feeling about this one. I'll say that straight away. Now, this one just has a really nice richness to it. The aroma, you're going to notice that about this straight away. The aroma is just really nice and rich, and it's got a good little bit of depth to it. It smells very, very kind of silky, actually. It actually reminds me of some of my favourite, you know, darker beers from Scotland. You know, I think about the March of the Penguins from Williams Brothers, or the Choo Choo from Fallon Brewing. Even, you know, Riptide from Brewdog was always a favourite one back in the day as well. So yeah, Old Engine Oil from Harveston, that's another one. But yeah, the aroma out of this I think is very, very nice actually. So I'm going to say to them straight away, thumbs up on that. Let's break the aroma down for you a little bit more and just describe it properly. Yeah, I mean, just a lovely beer. So the backbone of this one, you definitely get that big roasty toasty black malt that you would expect of this style. So yeah, lovely roasty toasty, well fired bread crust in there, some straight up black malt, but there's a lot of kind of chocolate out of this one. To be honest with you, I would actually disagree about the kind of coffee notes out of this. For me, coffee's a very distinct aroma, but to me this is like a big oily, kind of chocolatey and kind of cocoa nibby type aroma that you get out of this one. But there's quite a bit, I get quite a bit of brown sugar in this as well actually. So the coffee notes, in fair, yeah, I mean at the front of the nose there's a wee bit of coffee, but I think, you know, further back it is a bit more about the kind of, it's like a very deep chocolatey note and quite a bit of brown sugar in there. But yeah, coffee, in fairness, I don't think coffee's the most dominant aroma in this. I will be straight up about that. But whatever it is, you know, regardless, that's a very, very nice portent. One of the things I always like about reviewing beers from these very, very small breweries is that you tend to get beers that they just feel a little bit more kind of raw, in the sense they've not been overly kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? They've not been kind of overly played with, if you like. They've not been overly kind of, there's not been too many iterations of them, and they've not been kind of tweaked and things like that too much. But this one, you can tell straight away, this is, I just think this is going to be a really good quality one, so I'm excited to taste this. But yeah, nose on this one, roasty toasty black malt backbone. For me, there is a bit of a wee bit of a brown bready character in there. There's a lot of chocolate, and I'd say the chocolate notes that you're getting out of this one, the chocolatey side of this beer, it's quite dry and sort of cocoa nibby, but it's got a sort of 70% cocoa chocolate in there, so it's really leaning towards the dark end of the spectrum, but it still has an element of sweetness to it. So I think about a 70% cocoa note in this one. There is quite a bit of a toasted and slightly leathery brown sugar in this one as well. So if you get the kind of more leathery brown sugars, that usually tells you that the wort boil is a little bit longer. So I can't really guess what the wort boil of this porter might have been, but to me it comes across as having a slightly longer wort boil. Just you can smell the sort of dryness of the brown sugars, because we smell a bit sweet in the middle, but then you just get that leathery dryness to the brown sugars too. So I'm picking up some of that in this one. And for me, there is definitely a little bit of a more milky chocolate in there as well, like a sort of 30% cocoa kind of thing. But the aroma out of this is very nice. If there's a bit of coffee in this, and I don't think there's coffee beans being added to this, does it say? It's got wheat and rye in it, so that kind of makes sense. That'd be why we're getting some breadiness out of it, and some kind of brown bread, as I was saying. Because the rye's, I think, we're going to contribute to the sweetness in this as well, actually. But I was just wondering if there was coffee bean in it, because at the front of the nose, the more that you smell of it and the more your nose adjusts to it, you actually do get a little bit of quite an aromatic, just a slightly aromatic coffee bean. And coffee beans for me are my favourite adjunct to put in beers. You know, it's all about the mazzle with them, the metres above sea level at which they're grown, because then you start to get the more aromatic notes, the fruits and all of these kind of things. So coffee beans are one of the most complex adjuncts you can actually put into beer. But this beer does have a wee bit of that kind of aromatic coffee bean-like note at the top of the nose, so just pay attention to that. But yeah, definitely interesting to know that there's wheat and rye in this, and that would explain why this beer has a little bit of a bready character to it. I'm not sure how common it is to put wheat and rye in porters, actually. You know, I think it's probably more common to do that in a stout, actually, because the main difference for me between a porter and a stout is that the porter always had a lighter mouthfeel, and putting a lot of wheat and a lot of rye in these beers, that would thicken it up quite a bit, actually. So maybe that's why this beer smells a little bit more rich and things. But of course, the other difference is going to be the yeast. You get specific yeast strains for stouts and for porters. So yeah, that's interesting too. But obviously with this one, you get one or two little woody and kind of nutty subtleties to the malt base as well. But yeah, this one has a lot of the qualities you would expect from the style. It's pretty damn nice. On the hoppy side of things then, I think it's what you'd expect as well. There's just a little bit of hoppy character in here. When it comes to the green component, there's a bit of a smooth earthiness in there, a little bit of a herbal quality, some nice bright floral aromaticity, but at the same time it is a little bit wet, and you've also got a wee bit of that kind of lighter grassy sort of thing, like a wet, freshly cut grass. So yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one from that side of things, I think, is pretty damn nice. So it gets a thumbs up from me in that regard, actually. So yeah, the green component is pretty good as well. On the fruity side of things, yeah, for me, it's got a bit of a juicy kind of, it's not quite a sharp enough to be a plummy note. There is a wee teeny little bit of raisin in there, right enough, but I get quite a bit of blackcurrant and kind of blackberry out of this beer, really. Maybe a little bit of a slightly drier kind of note in there as well, a little bit of a kind of dry red fruity sort of thing. But you do get a little bit of an almost kind of chocolate brownie type note out of the beer also, the more that you smell of it. But yeah, this smells like a really, really good porter, actually. So as I always say, take a little bit of time to just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, because that's half the experience with craft beer and whiskey and sake and so on. But I think it's about time that we tried this beer. So yeah, this one is the Beelzebub 5.9% porter, a 5.9% porter from Dookit Brewing Company on the south side of Glasgow here in Scotland. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that is pretty nice, actually. I'm going to say straight away, I wondered about the mouthfeel of this beer before, what it was going to be like, but yeah, this does have the lightness and the kind of, it's almost got a little bit of Christmas to it as well. It does have the lightness that you would want from a porter rather than the kind of thickness of the stout. And as I say, that's the key difference. That is the key difference. I'm going to say straight away, that's a really well made porter. Not a style that you find too many examples of these days, right enough, but this one is really well made. So I think my next review from these guys, we'll need to have a look at something from the lighter end of the spectrum and see what we think of that. But this beer is very true to style, and you can tell that it's been well made. So yeah, I'm impressed with that. So I think we need to try a few more Dookit beers, but let's break this one down and just explain the flavour as we always do. So, straight away with this beer, as you often get with porters, you've got this roasty toasty, you can feel that roasty toasty backbone just go right across the middle of your palate there, middle third and back third, but we're going to focus on the middle third of your palate first off. So yeah, you get the roasty toasty backbone there, but the further you go into the flavour with it, it's actually more like a really smooth rye bread crust. The bready, this porter does have a lot of bready character to it, and that is due to the wheat and the rye. So the rye is the one that's giving you the more kind of grainy flavour, but it really does have a little bit of that sweet German rye bread kind of character to it. I do miss the German bakeries. When I lived in Heidelberg, I was there pretty much every couple of days getting some new bread. But yeah, the things that you get out of this beer on the kind of malty backbone are very, very nice. So you can feel that nice sweet that sweet brown rye bready character in there. There's a smooth white bready kind of wheaty. You can feel just the wheat smoothing out that thing there. So there is a little touch of an almost white bready character in there just sitting on top of that. So yeah, you've got the rye bread crust, the smooth brown rye bread on top of that, and then just a little touch of white bread. Then on top of all of that, you get the kind of dry side of the chocolatey part of this beer. So that's really quite nice actually. So the chocolatey side of this beer that you get on that middle third of your palate, you've got a bit of a spectrum. So towards the back of that middle third of your palate, you definitely get a wee bit more of a kind of higher cocoa chocolate, a 60-70% cocoa. But as you move forward across the middle third of your palate, it's definitely a wee bit more of a, it definitely gives you a little bit more of a kind of milky chocolate as you reach the front of that middle third of your palate. Because remember, bitter flavours come out on the back of your palate, sweeter flavours come out a little bit further forward, and you're seeing that in this beer quite clearly actually. So, on top of that though, you do get a nice little bit of a kind of sweet brown sugary element there down the middle kind of line of your tongue, if you like. You get a nice smooth, you do get a very nice kind of smooth, slightly leathery brown sugary character out of it. So yeah, that does go together really nicely. Lovely smooth kind of leathery brown sugary qualities, and again, I'm a bit unsure about this one because it still has a big nice light mouthfeel to it in a way, but it's, the brown sugars do just feel leathery. So I'd be curious to know what the wort boil time on this was, because 90 minutes tends to be your standard, but porters, you can boil them a little bit longer, and I think this one might have had a slightly longer wort boil than just 90 minutes, because yeah, nice leathery kind of brown sugars there forming the base. In the dead centre of your palate, you do get a wee bit of a straight up caramel there, a straight up sweet caramel, but as you move further out from that dead centre point of your tongue, you've got a little bit more of a kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing to the beer. So yeah, it goes together really well from that perspective. So on the as we say, on the on that kind of, we say, on the on top of that, I mean, I'm just trying to see if there's any subtleties coming out of this beer. I think towards the front of that middle third of your palate, you have got a wee bit of a slightly woody character underneath, maybe a teeny little touch nutty. But other than that, I think we've covered everything in that middle third of your palate, and that's definitely the most complex part of the beer. So let's focus on the back third of your palate then. So the border region between middle third and back third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a bready build up there, a wee bit more bread crust. Base of the back third of your palate is a little bit more of a, it is a wee bit more of a kind of bread crusty sort of thing. On top of that, you get the more you get the brown bread character, then a little bit of that smooth white bread. Then on top of all of that, you're getting the kind of yeasty component of the beer. So the yeasty component of the beer feels like a lot more of a wholemeal bread. There's a little bit of an almost kind of peppery, spicy sort of thing going on there. But yeah, you can feel the slightly yeasty flavours there on the very back of your palate, just on top of everything else. So you can feel that the back third of your palate, the flavour feels a little bit taller, but as you come further forward, it just condenses down a little bit. Yeah, condenses down a wee bit as you go into the middle third of your palate. So yeah, I think that is, pardon me, the bready and yeasty side of this beer covered quite nicely, to be honest with you. So in terms of the hoppy side of things then, let's focus on that. Back corners of the palate, there is definitely a nice little bit of earthiness there, and as you move further forward, it's a little bit kind of herbal, and as you push towards the kind of front corners on the sides of your palate, there is a little touch of a floral aromaticity, but it's quite a smooth floral aromaticity, and the earthiness and the herbal character makes me wonder if this is an English hop that's in here. It could be a little bit of Fugel, or Kent Goldings, or maybe even Bramling's Cross, but I think it was Bramling's Cross. It might be a little bit fruitier than it is, but Bramling's Cross is a very popular hop for English barley wines and stuff. So it wouldn't surprise me though, because it would give you these big fruity characters that we're seeing. But around the front curve of your palate, nice little bit of lighter grassness there. Wee touch of zestiness to it as well. But yeah, I like how this one goes about its business for sure. So yeah, hoppy side of the beer has what you'd want. So, on the I think that's everything we need to say about the hoppy side of the beer. The fruity side of things on the front third of the palate is quite interesting. So, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, again, you get a little bit of a kind of bready build up there. Then the base of that front third of your palate is like a really dry white bread, and there's a wee bit of a more grainy, woody sort of thing in it as well. But sitting on top of that, you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy, fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer, and it works. It really does work. So if we focus on the back of that front third of your palate, then this beer actually does have a wee bit of sharpness to the fruits, and I'm hoping that's not oxidation. I'm really hoping it's not, but it does have a wee bit of sharpness to it. But yeah, you get a wee bit of a kind of raisiny note sitting on top of the of everything. Then as you go further down, it does show you get a little bit of that kind of almost cakey, fruit cakey sort of thing. So you can feel that down there, and as you move further forward, it's got a little bit more of a it has got a little bit more of a say yeah, it's got a little bit more of that kind of dry red fruity sort of. There's maybe a little bit of a kind of pruny sort of thing in there, but yeah, as you move further forward, it gets a little bit more kind of black curranty, and then as you go, or maybe a bit of figgy character actually, and then it's a bit black curranty as you go into the front half of your palate, and sitting on top of that, there is a wee bit of a kind of sharper tart blackberry sort of thing coming out of this one. So yeah, the fruity notes are actually quite sharp in this one, but I'm hoping that that's not down to, you know, oxidation or something like that. But yeah, it has got quite a wee bit of sharpness to it, which I didn't quite expect. But yeah, overall, this is a really nicely done porter actually. So I think we can leave it at that for the tasting side of things, and we can round off with a look at the mouthfeel. So overall, I would say that this beer is the kind of top end, bottom end of mid-bodied rather. Yeah, bottom end of mid-bodied. The carbonation does have a degree of crispness to it, but you're always going to get that in these really small brewed, small batch beers like this. So not surprised about that, to be quite honest with you. The mouthfeel, you know, it's actually quite a clean and just slick mouthfeel that you get out of this, and I think it works very, very nicely actually. So on the as we would say on the malty side of things, like I said, it's got a little bit of a grainy backbone to it, some nice sweetness, and you've also got some a good little bit of kind of hoppy character in there as well. But it's the malty side of things. I think it's got a good bit of bitterness, bit of smoothness, and also a little bit of a sweetness. But the sweetness is quite smooth in a sense. The hoppy bitterness to this beer is a bit difficult to figure out exactly how many IBUs are in this one, but I'd say it's maybe somewhere in the region of 50 or 60, and that's coming both from the malt base and from the hops themselves. Then the fruity side of the beer actually has a wee bit of sharpness to it, but it's quite an oily kind of slick fruitiness that you get from the beer. But overall, I think this one is pretty nice actually. But yeah, very well done porter, and for a brewery that are so kind of early on into their history, I think it's a very promising sign. So we all need to try something from the lighter end of the spectrum from these guys at some point soon. If they do open up their tap room, we will need to go and have a little look at doing an out and about video there. Maybe we can do an interview with Harry as well. But yeah, I think that's a nice place to round off this one then. So yeah, this was the Beelzebub porter at 5.9% ABV from Dookit Brewing Company on the south side of Glasgow. So let's leave it there. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Dookit Brewing as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point fairly soon. Thank you for watching. Check out my social media, check out Dookit Brewing Company's social media, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.